My boyfriend said, "I'm still seeing her. Deal with it." I replied, "Okay." Then I packed my bags while he was at her place and left a note on the counter. Good luck with her. He came home to an empty closet. My name is Avery Bennett. I'm 29 years old. And if you had asked me a month before that night whether I thought my relationship was healthy, I probably would have hesitated just long enough to embarrass myself. Not because I didn't know, because deep down I did. I just hadn't admitted it yet. My boyfriend, Evan Mercer, is 27. We had been together a little over 3 years and living together for almost one. If you asked him, he probably would have said we were comfortable, settled, past the stage where people perform for each other. If you asked me, I would have told you something I never said out loud until after I left. I had slowly disappeared inside my own apartment. It wasn't one big dramatic thing at first. It was smaller than that, harder to explain. Evan had this way of talking that made it sound like he was already tired of you before you finished your sentence. Even when he asked something ordinary, there was always an edge under it. Everything about me became faintly wrong. The way I loaded the dishwasher, the way I folded towels, the music I liked, the old concert t-shirts I still slept in. He used to tease me about them in a playful way when we first started dating. Later, he started looking at them like they were proof I had failed to evolve. "You still wear that?" he asked once, glancing at one of my faded band shirts. "It's soft," I said. "It's tragic," he replied. Then he laughed, like I was supposed to laugh too. That was the rhythm of us by the end. Little cuts delivered with a smile. Comments just sharp enough to make me flinch, then small enough to make me feel stupid for noticing. About 2 months before everything broke open, he started going out more. Not work events, not guys' nights with names I recognized, just out. He would stand in front of the mirror longer than he ever had for me, smoothing down his shirt, fixing his hair, reaching for cologne he normally saved for special occasions. Then he'd grab his keys and say something vague like, "I'm meeting someone." If I asked who, he would sigh. That sigh became its own language. "Why does it matter?" That was his favorite sentence near the end. "Why does it matter who I'm with? Why does it matter when I'll be back? Why does it matter if I answer my phone?" The cruel brilliance of that question was that it made any answer sound needy. Then there was his phone. Always face down, always locked, always within reach. If I walked into the room while he was texting, he would angle the screen away without even thinking about it. Not dramatically, instinctively. I asked him once, directly, if something was going on. He laughed, actually laughed. Then he leaned against the kitchen counter, folded his arms, and gave me that exhausted half-smile he used when he wanted me to feel childish. "Avery, you're being paranoid," he said. "And honestly, insecurity is not a good look on you." That should have been enough. Not proof of cheating, maybe, but proof of something uglier. Still, I stayed, because real life is messier than people like to admit. Sometimes you stay because you're tired. Sometimes because you keep thinking the person you loved is still in there somewhere. And sometimes because the erosion is so gradual, you don't realize how small you've become until one day you hear yourself apologizing for taking up space in your own life. Last Friday night, it finally stopped being subtle. We had been arguing, though calling it an argument gives it too much equality. He was irritated. I was trying not to make him more irritated. That was closer to the truth. I asked where he had been the night before. He told me out. I asked with who. He looked at me like I had tracked mud across the floor. "For God's sake," he muttered. "Why are you always doing this?" "Doing what?" "This," he said, gesturing toward me like I was the problem in physical form. "Interrogating me, making everything heavy." My voice sounded thin even to me. "I'm asking because you came home at 2 in the morning smelling like perfume that isn't mine." He stared at me for 1 second too long. Then he said it. Casually, flatly, almost bored. "I'm still seeing her. Deal with it." Her. His ex-girlfriend. The one he swore was ancient history. The one he once described as a mistake he outgrew. I expected denial, deflection, anger. I did not expect honesty delivered like contempt. I did not yell. I did not throw anything. I did not cry. I just looked at him and said, "Okay." For the first time all night, he seemed pleased. He smirked, like my calm meant surrender. He grabbed his jacket from the hook by the door and slid his phone into his pocket. "I'll be back later," he said. Not late. Later. Like I was a roommate, he was politely updating. The door shut behind him, and the apartment went quiet. Heavy quiet. The kind that lets the truth settle into the furniture. I stood in the middle of the living room for a long time, staring at the dent in the couch cushion where he always sat. The lamp beside it was the one he picked. The coffee table was his style. The framed prints on the wall were his taste. Even the rug had been an argument I lost because the one I liked was, according to him, too feminine and overthought. At first I wasn't angry. That came later. At first, I just felt clear. This wasn't a confession dragged out by guilt. He had looked me in the eye and told me he was still seeing another woman like it was an inconvenience I was supposed to absorb. That kind of honesty isn't bravery. It's contempt. I walked into the bedroom and opened the closet. His clothes took up most of it. Crisp button-downs, jackets lined by color, shoes arranged in pairs beneath the hanging shirts. My side was a narrow strip of hangers and a drawer I had slowly learned to keep compact so I wouldn't have to hear comments about clutter. I stared at that closet and thought, of course. So I started packing. Not dramatically, not angrily. I pulled my duffel bag from under the bed, then the old suitcase I'd had since college. I folded my clothes carefully. Shirts stacked, jeans folded cleanly, socks rolled into pairs. Halfway through, my phone buzzed. A text from Evan. "Don't wait up!" I looked at it for a second, then set the phone face down on the dresser and kept packing. In the bathroom, I took my toothbrush, my razor, my shampoo, the plain moisturizer he once said looked aggressively practical. The more I packed, the more I realized how little of the apartment was really mine. That should have devastated me. Instead, it made leaving easier. Before I walked out, I went to the junk drawer in the kitchen, found a sticky note and a pen that skipped slightly when I wrote, "Good luck with her." I stuck it on the counter where he would see it the second he walked in. Then I picked up my bags, looked around the apartment one last time, and walked out. By the time I got to my brother's place, it was close to midnight. He opened the door, took one look at the suitcase in my hand, and stepped aside without asking a single question. That kindness nearly broke me more than the betrayal had. He handed me water, pointed to the couch, and said, "You can tell me tomorrow." I nodded and sat down, but I did not sleep much that night. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying Evan's voice in my head. I'm still seeing her. Deal with it. The thing that hurt most was not even the cheating. It was how easy he made cruelty sound. The next morning, just before noon, my phone started exploding. Missed calls. Texts stacked one after another. "Where are you? Are you seriously doing this? Did you really leave? Avery, answer me." Then another message came in. "What the hell do you mean good luck with her?" I smiled without meaning to, because finally he had come home to the one thing he never thought I would give him, an empty closet. I did not answer him right away. That was new. For 3 years, I had been the one who rushed to smooth things over. If he went quiet, I checked in. If he snapped, I recalibrated. If he withdrew, I searched myself for the mistake. That morning, I let the phone ring until it stopped. Then ring again. My brother was in the kitchen making coffee when I finally sat up. The apartment smelled like burnt toast and dark roast, and for a strange second, that ordinary smell felt more comforting than anything I had experienced in months. He glanced at me over his shoulder. "You want breakfast or revenge?" My laugh came out rough. "Coffee first." Smart. He set a mug in front of me without pressing for details, and that restraint made it easier to talk. So I did. Not all at once, in pieces, enough for him to understand the shape of it. When I repeated Evan's exact words, my brother stopped stirring his coffee. "He said that?" I nodded. "Word for word." He let out a slow breath. "Then you did the right thing." Simple. No lecture, no asking why I stayed so long. Just certainty I had not been able to give myself. My phone buzzed again on the table. "Avery, this is insane." Then another. "Call me now." Then one more. "You took your lamp? Seriously?" I stared at the screen before my brother gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "The lamp?" He noticed the lamp. That man cheats on you, and his emotional breaking point is interior lighting. That made me laugh again, and the laugh hurt because it was too close to crying. I still didn't reply. I let him sit in the silence for another hour. Then, a little after noon, I texted him once. "You told me to deal with it. This is me dealing with it." The typing bubble appeared almost immediately. Disappeared. Came back. Then finally, "You're overreacting." A second message followed before I could even set the phone down. "It was just sex. I didn't think you'd actually leave." That line stayed with me, long after the screen went dark. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I was wrong." Just shock that I had done something he never expected me to do. My brother looked at me carefully. "You okay?" I thought about that. Not whether I was fine. I clearly wasn't. But whether I still knew where I ended and his version of me began. "I think," I said slowly, "I'm just seeing him clearly for the first time." My brother nodded like that was answer enough. That evening, a little before sunset, someone knocked on the door. 3 hard raps, quick and irritated. I already knew. My brother knew Evan had met him here before when we'd all had dinner a few months back. It didn't surprise either of us that he'd come straight here once I stopped answering. My brother looked at me from the couch. "You want me to get rid of him?" Part of me did, but another part of me knew I needed to see him now. "I've got it," I said. When I opened the door, Evan was standing on the porch with his arms crossed and his jaw tight. He looked good in the most useless way possible. Clean shirt, watch on, hair pushed back like he had taken time with himself before coming over to confront the woman he betrayed. That detail felt important. He had prepared to be right. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask if I was okay. He looked annoyed. "You embarrassed me," he said. For a second, I honestly thought I had misheard him. Then something inside me tipped into disbelief so complete it came out as laughter. His expression hardened. "What's funny?" "That's your opening line?" I asked. Not sorry, not are you okay, not I handled that horribly. "You embarrassed me?" His eyes flashed. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Act like this. Like this." Those two words again, as if my reaction were the offense. "We could have worked through it," he said, lowering his voice like he was being rational now. I looked at him for a long moment. "Worked through it." Like infidelity was a scheduling problem. "That's what you think this is?" I asked quietly. "Something to work through?" He exhaled, already frustrated. "Avery, you're acting like I stabbed you." That sentence landed harder than I expected, because it told me exactly how he measured harm. If there was no visible wound, it did not count. "People cheat," he said with a shrug. "It happens. It doesn't have to be the end of the world unless you make it one." There it was. Pain only mattered if he felt it. I folded my arms, not defensively, just to keep myself steady. "How long?" He blinked. "What?" "How long have you been seeing her?" That was the only question I asked. Not why. Not whether he loved her. Just how long. Because length changes everything. A night is one kind of betrayal. A pattern is another. He hesitated. Only for a second. But it was enough. Then he said, "Does it matter?" I almost smiled. Because that answer was the answer. Of course it mattered. And the fact that he refused to say it told me the truth was bad enough. He stepped closer and lowered his voice. "You're really going to throw everything away over this?" Everything. That word should have sounded huge. Instead, it sounded hollow. Everything apparently meant the apartment I barely fit into, the relationship where I had to shrink to stay loved, the future built around his assumption that I would tolerate whatever version of him showed up. I looked at him then, really looked, and something in me went still. I wasn't attracted to him anymore. Not physically, not emotionally, not even nostalgically. Whatever spell had survived on hope and habit broke right there on my brother's porch. "All this time," I said, "you thought the worst thing that could happen here was me finding out." He frowned. "But it's not. The worst thing that happened to you is that I believed you." He stared at me, thrown off just enough to look younger, less polished, almost boyish in the ugliest sense, someone unused to consequence. From inside the apartment, I heard my brother moving around in the kitchen, not intervening, just there, a witness. Evan's voice tightened. "So that's it?" I nodded. "That's it." He laughed once under his breath. Unbelievable. Maybe he meant me. Maybe the situation. Either way, I no longer cared. "I'll come by this weekend for the rest of my things," I said, "when you're at work." He rolled his eyes. "Do whatever you want." That was the last thing he said before I closed the door. As I leaned back against it after he left, listening to his footsteps fade down the steps, I realized something that should have devastated me, but didn't. There was nothing left to save. Only myself. 2 days later, I went back to the apartment. Not to talk. Not to argue. Just to finish what I had started. I chose late morning because he was usually gone then. I wanted boxes, not another conversation. The building hallway smelled faintly like detergent and stale air conditioning, the same way it always had. It was strange how ordinary everything looked after something inside your life had collapsed. For a moment, I stood outside the door with my keys in my hand. This had been home, or at least the place I had tried to turn into one. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Silence greeted me first, then the faint smell of wine. The living room looked almost the same as when I left. Evan's shoes by the door, his jacket thrown over the back of the couch. But the energy in the room felt different. Not tense, not warm either, just careless. There were 2 wine glasses in the sink. One of them had lipstick on the rim. I stared at it for a second, then looked away. A gray hoodie hung over the back of one of the dining chairs. Not mine. Not his either. Her. The realization didn't land like a punch. More like confirmation. I moved through the apartment slowly, collecting the rest of my things. Books from the shelf near the couch. The small toolkit I kept under the kitchen sink. The spare phone charger I had bought after Evan borrowed the first one and never gave it back. Each item went into a cardboard box I had brought from my brother's place. Halfway through packing, I noticed the sticky note was gone. The counter where I left it was clean. For some reason, that made me pause. He had seen it. He had peeled it off. Maybe it irritated him more than the empty closet did. By the time I finished packing the last box, the apartment felt less like a shared space and more like a hotel room I had overstayed in. I carried the first box down to my car, then came back for the second. When I walked inside again, Evan was standing in the kitchen. I hadn't heard him come in. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching me like he was trying to figure out a puzzle. "You didn't say you were coming today," he said. "I didn't need to." His eyes flicked to the box in my hands. "You're really taking everything?" "Yes." He pushed himself off the counter and walked slowly into the living room, glancing around like he was only now noticing the gaps. "You know," he said casually, "you left over nothing." I set the box down on the coffee table and started taping it shut. "Nothing?" "Yeah, we could have worked it out." There it was again. Worked it out. He said it the same way people talk about scheduling conflicts. "You left before we even talked about options." I looked up at him. "What options?" He shrugged like the answer was obvious. "We could have redefined things." The tape in my hands stopped moving. "Redefined." "Yeah, not be so rigid about it." "Rigid." Because I didn't want to be cheated on. For a moment, I honestly wondered if he could hear himself. "You didn't want an open relationship," I said quietly. He frowned. "You wanted a backup plan." His jaw tightened. "That's not fair." Neither is acting shocked that I left. His expression hardened immediately. There it was. The version of him I had lived with for 3 years. The one who could not stand being reflected accurately. "You're twisting this," he snapped. "Am I?" "Yes." His voice rose slightly. "You're acting like I committed some unforgivable crime. You cheated on me. It was sex." He said it like a correction, like the difference mattered. "A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday," I said. "Not maintaining a second relationship." He rolled his eyes. "You're so dramatic." That word again. The label he used whenever my feelings interfered with his convenience. "You know what your problem is?" he continued. "You take everything personally." I stared at him. "Everything? You mean being lied to? You mean being cheated on? You mean being told to deal with it?" His mouth opened slightly, then closed. For a split second, he looked uncertain. Then the defensiveness came back. "You're going to regret this," he said. I sealed the box and lifted it into my arms. Regret what? Throwing away a relationship over pride. Pride. That word made something inside me click into place. For so long, I had thought the opposite of pride was humility. But standing there in the living room, where I had slowly erased parts of myself to make things easier for him, I realized the real opposite of pride was self-respect. "You think this is pride?" I asked. "Yes." "No," I said calmly. "This is boundaries." He laughed sharply. "Good luck finding someone who'll put up with you the way I did." There it was, the final insult. "You're average, Avery," he continued. "You're safe, boring, replaceable." 6 months earlier, those words would have wrecked me. But standing there now, holding a box filled with my own things, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Because if that was how he saw me, then leaving had been the smartest decision I had made in years. "I hope you're right," I said. That answer clearly wasn't what he expected. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means if I'm boring to someone like you, then I'm probably doing something right." I carried the box down the hallway and out to my car. When I came back upstairs for the last one, Evan was still standing in the doorway of the apartment, arms crossed, watching. But this time he didn't say anything. I picked up the final box and walked past him. He didn't try to stop me, didn't apologize, didn't ask me to stay. He just stood there, looking irritated and slightly bewildered, like someone who had miscalculated something important but didn't want to admit it. As I carried the box down the stairs, I realized something that would have been impossible a week earlier. I didn't hate him. Hate would have meant he still had a place in my emotional life. Instead, I felt something quieter. Distance. Life didn't magically improve after that. It just got quieter. The kind of quiet you notice slowly, like background noise disappearing one layer at a time. No tension humming under every conversation. No waiting for the next comment that would make me feel like I had somehow misbehaved inside my own life. I moved into a short-term sublet about 10 minutes from my brother's place. Cheap furniture. Neutral walls. Nothing on the shelves yet. At first, the emptiness felt temporary, but after a few days, I realized the emptiness was the point. There were no memories attached to anything in that space. No arguments echoing off the walls. No invisible rules about where things belonged or how loudly I was allowed to exist. Just quiet. The first night there, I ate cereal for dinner while sitting on the floor because I hadn't bought a table yet. Halfway through the bowl, I realized something strange. I wasn't anxious. Not even a little. For months, maybe longer, my nervous system had been waiting for the next criticism, the next moment where I'd have to explain myself for something ordinary. Without Evan in the room, that tension simply wasn't there. Of course, that didn't mean the outside world stopped trying to drag his orbit back into mine, By the end of the first week, mutual friends had started reaching out. Hey, are you okay? Just checking in. I heard you two had a fight. The word fight made me laugh the first time I saw it. A fight suggested two people were involved equally. What had actually happened was much simpler. One person decided honesty didn't matter. The other decided self-respect did. Eventually, one of our mutual friends, Kara, called me while I was unpacking a box of books. So, I talked to Evan, she said carefully. Of course she had. And there was a pause. He's having a hard time. That sentence hung in the air between us like something fragile. I sat on the edge of the bed. A hard time, I repeated. Yeah, he said he didn't think you were serious. I almost smiled. He feels blindsided. Blindsided. Apparently, discovering consequences after announcing an affair counted as being ambushed now. Kara hesitated. He thought you'd cool off and come back, that you two would figure it out. I looked around my little sublet apartment. The mismatched chairs, the bare walls, the stack of unpacked boxes near the window. No, I said quietly. We figured it out already. She didn't argue. But after we hung up, I realized something else. People weren't asking how I felt. They were asking how he was doing. Because in the story he was telling, I was the one who had walked out dramatically. I let him have that narrative. Correcting it would have meant staying emotionally connected to someone I had already decided to leave behind. About 2 weeks later, he called around midnight. I was half asleep on the couch with a blanket and a documentary playing quietly in the background. Evan's name lit up the screen. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. I answered. He didn't say hello. He started crying. Not loud, theatrical crying. More like someone who had been drinking and finally reached the emotional edge of the night. Avery, he said hoarsely. I didn't respond. I feel stupid. Silence again. I miss you, he continued. His voice cracked slightly. I miss how easy things were with you. There it was. Not I miss you. I miss how easy things were. Easy. To him, easy meant predictable, stable. Someone who absorbed emotional damage without disrupting the routine. Things aren't working with her, he said. That part didn't surprise me. She's jealous all the time, wants to know where I am, who I'm with. It's exhausting. The irony was so thick it almost made me laugh. You were always steady, he added softly. For a long moment, I didn't say anything. I could feel him waiting on the other end of the line, waiting for reassurance, waiting for the version of me that used to smooth everything over. Finally, I spoke. You didn't miss me when you thought I wouldn't leave. The line went completely quiet. Then the call ended. The next morning, I blocked his number. Not because I was angry, because I was done. Later that afternoon, my brother came over to help me assemble a cheap bookshelf I bought online. Halfway through the process, he looked up from the instructions. You okay being alone? He asked. I thought about it for a second. The quiet apartment, the absence of tension, the freedom of not explaining myself to anyone. I don't feel alone, I said. What do you feel? I leaned back against the wall and considered the question carefully. Unclaimed. The word surprised both of us. My brother smiled slightly. That sounds healthier than what you had before. He was right. And about a month after everything ended, I ran into Evan again. At the grocery store near our old apartment, the one we both used to use. Same aisle. Pasta sauce. He froze when he saw me. For a moment, neither of us moved. It had been a little over a month since I left. Evan looked different. Not dramatically, just small changes. His hair was longer than usual. The dark circles under his eyes were deeper. His shoulders looked tighter, like he'd been sleeping badly. He laughed first, awkwardly. Wow, he said. Guess the universe has jokes. I nodded once. Polite, neutral. So, how are you? He asked. Good. The word came out easily. That seemed to surprise him. His eyes scanned my face for a second, like he was checking for cracks. You look fine, he said slowly. I am. We stood there in the middle of the aisle while someone pushed a cart past us, clearly annoyed we were blocking the pasta sauce section. Evan stepped aside first. Then he looked back at me. I moved her in, he said suddenly. The ex, I said. Yeah. And? He exhaled. She moved out. That was fast. I didn't comment. He ran a hand through his hair. She's intense, he said, always checking my phone, asking where I am. The irony hovered between us like a third person. Apparently he noticed it too, because he gave a small, uncomfortable laugh. I guess I didn't realize how good I had it. There it was, the compliment that always comes too late. You were always steady, he continued quietly. I placed the jar of pasta sauce into my cart. Steady doesn't mean invisible, I said. He nodded slowly. I know that now. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to say more. Then, you ever think about us? The question hung in the air longer than I expected. Not because it was complicated, because it wasn't. I thought about the apartment, the empty closet, the sticky note, The quiet of my new place. Then I answered, "Not anymore." His face didn't crumple. There was no dramatic reaction, just a small flattening of his expression, like a door quietly closing somewhere inside him. "Oh," he said. A beat of silence followed. Then he nodded once. "Well, I'm glad you're okay." "I am." That part was true. He shifted the jar in his hands like he'd forgotten why he picked it up in the first place. "I guess I should let you shop," he said. "Probably." Then I turned my cart toward the checkout lanes. As I walked away, I heard him call after me. "Avery?" I stopped and turned back. "Yeah?" "Take care of yourself." I studied him for a moment. Then I nodded. "You too." I finished my shopping, paid for the groceries, and walked out into the parking lot. I sat in my car for a minute before starting the engine. Not because I felt overwhelmed, because I felt nothing. No rush of victory. No sadness. No nostalgia. Just confirmation. The chapter was over. After the grocery store run-in, I expected some emotional aftershock. Maybe nostalgia sneaking in late at night. Maybe curiosity strong enough to make me check his social media. None of it came. What came instead was distance. Mutual friends stopped bringing him up after a while. Group plans changed too. Without Evan in the mix, the atmosphere felt lighter. That realization surprised me more than anything. For a long time, I thought the tension in social situations was normal. Only later did I notice how often conversations used to shift to accommodate his moods. Without him, no one needed to calibrate. One night, my brother and I were sitting on my balcony with cheap takeout containers and 2 beers balanced on the railing. The city lights blinked quietly below us. He looked over at me after a while. "Do you miss him?" It wasn't a loaded question. Just curiosity. I thought about it honestly before answering. I missed the version of him I thought existed. That's not the same thing. "No," I said, "it isn't." The truth was, what I had really been grieving at the beginning wasn't Evan himself. It was the imagined future I had built around him. Once that illusion collapsed, there wasn't much left to miss. A few weeks later, I got an email from him. The subject line read, "Closure." I stared at it for a long time before opening it. The message was surprisingly formal. He wrote that he had been thinking a lot about everything that happened, that he had started therapy, that he finally understood why I left. He said he wasn't writing because he expected us to get back together. He just wanted peace between us. Peace. That word made me lean back in my chair. Because for Evan, peace had always meant access. Being able to reach me whenever he felt lonely or reflective or nostalgic. I didn't reply. A week later, another email arrived. Shorter. Colder. Just 1 sentence. I guess I deserve that. That was the closest thing to accountability he ever offered. I deleted the message. Not angrily, just efficiently. That night I lay in bed thinking about the sticky note, about how small it was, how simple the message had been. Good luck with her. No insults. No explanation. Just facts. And the quiet understanding that if someone tells you to deal with disrespect, sometimes the healthiest response is exactly that. Deal with it. By leaving. A few months passed. Life filled in around the empty spaces. I bought furniture I actually liked instead of what looked adult enough. I stayed out late sometimes without explaining myself to anyone. I ate cereal for dinner more often than I probably should have. Small freedoms. Quiet rebellions. People imagine breakups like explosions, shouting matches, slammed doors, dramatic declarations. But the real ending of my relationship with Evan had been quieter than that. It happened the moment he told me to deal with being disrespected. And I believed him. Some people think love means endurance. That strength is staying no matter what happens. But sometimes strength looks different. Sometimes it looks like packing your bags while someone else assumes you'll stay. Leaving a small note on the counter. Walking out without a speech. And never needing to come back. I don't hate Evan. Hate would mean he still had space in my life. Instead, he's just part of a story that taught me something important. Love isn't supposed to require you to disappear. And if someone ever tells you to deal with disrespect, you can, by choosing yourself.